monetization. So I thought, well, let's just throw some of those into an evening and have a merry time to round off this year. So that's what tonight's going to be. We've got 3 local Austin companies presenting, doing short presentations and taking your questions. We also have, before we get to that segment of the evening, we have a couple of friends here from South by Southwest to tell you about what's happening at South by Southwest in 2020. And I won't steal your thunder because I've actually got no clue what's happening. I know a little bit what's happening, and you can't mention one of the things that's happening. But it's going to be good. Okay, carry on. Who's new here? Who has never been to a meetup? So most of you. So in which case, this next bit will bore you because I always say if you leave here tonight with only one piece of information, which you shouldn't do because there's been an awful lot being presented. It's the website URL of the Austin Blockchain Collective, which is austinblockchaincollective.com, which, by the way, was registered on GoDaddy 2 years ago exactly today. Pretty amazing. As well as so on the website, there's lots of information. There's also lots of links to where you can find other information, like we've got a LinkedIn group, we've got a Twitter feed, we've got a blog on Medium. But if you go to austinblockchaincollective.com, you can kind of find everything. And if you can't, you can just quickly send a message to me and ask me where it is. Next. We've kind of been evolving what the collective is kind of been sort of positioning itself as. I think we're quite comfortable with this one, which is really, it's here to promote the City of Austin's credentials as a thought leader, innovation leader in the world of blockchain. I think that's a true statement. We've got 120-ish companies with a presence here. We've got all sorts of different industries represented. We've got investors here. We've got real thought leadership happening here. So I think it's true to say we've got a great, an awful lot of innovation business going on here. The collective is kind of here broadly to kind of shepherd that along. So we've actually been quite successful in connecting companies together so they can work together, not only within the collective but outside with groups like Capital Factory, South by Southwest, University of Texas, Dell Medical School. I'm probably forgetting a couple, City of Austin. So we've done some good connection of different kind of people with different sort of what they bring to the party of the whole kind of blockchain ecosystem. And that's what I think what we're going to carry on doing next year. We're very much bottom up, helping companies here connect, do better, collaborate, win business in some cases. And we think if we do that and help Austin blockchain companies get bigger and better, that we think Austin will along with it. We are very thankful to have a few companies actually provide us either with outright financial or in-kind support, and we are certainly always on the lookout for more, because apart from anything, it is really inexpensive to get your logo on this page and have it displayed on every single email I send out, blog I do, meeting I do. It's kind of tattooed on my dog. So it's a great place to actually get some brand recognition for what you're doing. I think we've got 2 or 3 more coming along, and we will be making sure everyone knows about how they can, along with these visionary companies, be part of helping the collective with its mission. in 2020. And next, huge thanks to the space that we're in, Capital Factory, which not only provides space for meetups like this evening for the Austin Blockchain Collective, it also provides space for the Hyperledger meetup, the Ethereum meetup, the Hedera Hashcraft meetup, the BitAngels meetup. That might be it. So they do an awful lot of very good in the community. They also actually provide the collective with space here that we use during the week, which we use in a few different ways. One is it's really good to have some great facilities to work out, but it also means that we're very good at connecting with the companies here that have been, some of which have been invested in by Capital Factory, some of which are in the Accelerate program, and some of which are corporate partners. So these logos you see around the wall are all Capital Factory's innovation partners, and we are able to connect with them, and we have done, and we've used that facility as a, for instance, to connect some of our startups with these larger companies to help them do business. So it's a very good symbiotic relationship. We help Capital Factory in some of their programs like their Innovation Council and their Startup Week, and they help us by a very practical ways, but with lots of great connections. So great to be here. Thanks Josh Beer and everyone out there tuning in on the live stream. This is being live streamed, by the way, so, and recorded to YouTube. So any of you presenters, don't say anything stupid. It's on the web forever. Okay. Quick notices. These meetups will be continuing in 2020, back here in this room, third Monday of every month, starting January 20th. We won't be here in March because there's another little event happening in March called South by Southwest, and they kind of get in the way of everything. So we're going to take that month off, but otherwise we're here. Something else I wanted to mention, which is if you go to our blog on Medium, I put a post up there a couple of weeks ago, basically highlighting what I've called the Austin Blockchain Bookshelf. We've actually had about 5 or 6 local experts in blockchain write books recently and publish books. And so we've kind of highlighted those. So Karen Kilroy has got one about blockchain as a service. Jimmy Song, God bless him, is writing about programming Bitcoin. There's another really good one about cryptocurrencies. There's a couple by Tiana Lawrence, who used to be in Austin. She's in Dallas now, but never mind. And she's written a couple of really good books. So, and also Jared Tate just released a really good book called Blockchain 2035, which is full of really useful facts. And you can buy it on demand on Amazon for not very much. So if you're looking for a gift for a loved one for Christmas, I definitely think about getting them a blockchain book from a local Austin expert. And you can find them on our blog post, which you can find our blog from our website. So it all works together. Couple of quick shout outs. We are putting on a conference in the end of February. And it's going to be one very much focused on blockchain, digital transformation, healthcare. We're working with Dell Medical School on that one, going to be on February 26th. I'm recruiting speakers, recruiting sponsors, recruiting delegates right now. So I would love to see you all there, because it's going to be one of the interesting, unique aspects of it, because we're working with Dell Medical School on it. It's going to have academic presentations as well as industry ones. So that's going to set it apart from most of the other healthcare kind of blockchain events out there. And the final shout out, which is kind of a bit of a segue into the first presentation of the evening is the collective is involved with a session at South by Southwest, which I'm on. Thank you to Karen Kilroy for inviting me. But also, it's really about how to launch new blockchain networks with a big spin on how to use cloud technology to do that. Couple of great speakers. I don't know whether people remember Paige from IBM, who came to speak at our meetup a little while ago. She's on the panel, and Todd Little, I think he's out of Chicago, Oracle guy, really good technical Oracle guy who'll be able to give you a lot of good understanding in the tweaks Oracle have done to Hyperledger Fabric to make it into something really usable in the cloud. So I think that's going to be a really good presentation. And with that, before we do any presentations, we usually just see whether anyone in the audience has got anything they want to say about what they're doing. You can get up if you're hiring, if you're looking for a job, if you've got something big happening in your company you want to tell people about. Anything along those lines. Who's got anything for me this time? It's interesting. The last couple of times people have been so quiet. Richard, what's happening?
Well, half our team are already off for Christmas break. We've been working that hard that we're taking the year off. Yeah. We wrote a little book for kids on blockchain. And it's called Crypto in New York.
You wrote a book?
Yeah.
Is it not in my... Who wrote the book? Did you write the book?
I wrote the book, yes.
Well, why don't you tell me? I'll put it on my blog post.
There it is. It's called Crypto in New York.
Okay, you find something out. Thank you for telling me. I'll get that from you and we'll put it up. Yeah. Who's got anything more to say? I'm going to find someone and nab them. Who's new? Who's never been to a blockchain meetup before? Okay, why are you here?
To learn more about from the talks, learn more about blockchain in general.
And why do you want to know more about blockchain?
Oh, it's because I think there's a real future with that. I'm quite interested.
Okay, so you've believed the hype too. Okay, who else is new? I'll take you. Why are you here?
For essentially the same reasons. I think there's future in it, yeah.
Do you work with blockchain or do you want to work with blockchain?
I am interested in it, so don't currently work with it though.
Good. Well, maybe after this evening you'll want to work with it. Any more shout-outs? Oh, there's one over there. Thank you for Greg for being behind me. Thank you. Hang on. I'm bringing the... You need to be on... You can, but you need to speak in the microphone.
Okay. For newbies or not so newbies, there's a Bitcoin meetup every Tuesday at Central Market, right, Kevin?
Just started back at Central.
Yeah, every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Yeah. So you might want to go there. There's no presentations, so you're just going to meet people. You learn a lot of stuff from this group because they've been doing it for... Paul Snow is the CEO of Factum, and I think that was a fork in 14. Yeah. So you'll learn a lot of stuff there if you want to learn. It's tomorrow.
It's a good meetup to go to because everyone kind of goes there and just talks about what they want to, and it's good. And by the way, if you want to know about the meetups happening in Austin, they're on our blog on on Monday of every week. We have a news post and we list all the meetups happening that week and sometimes the week after. And we also on Mondays tweet out about the meetups happening that week. And interesting, this week on Thursday at the Liberty on the east side, the Dogecoin meetup is meeting up for the first time in a little while. So we take all sorts. It's great. Good. So but the Bitcoin one's a great place to go to. And actually, it's not just about Bitcoin; it's kind of about anything crypto-wise. Okay. With that, I'm going to get the evening going with the first of the presentations. I'm going to hand over to Katie and Dax. I'm going to surrender my use of Apple TV. Nothing can go wrong. Go on, go on, go on. Okay. Are you good? Yeah. 4918. Are you good? There you go. You use that. There is another microphone over there which I'll grab in case that one blows up.
Okay. Oh, I really hope it doesn't blow up.
You never know at this place. Carry on.
Well, we'll test and see how long I can stand.
Katie and Dax from South by Southwest, give them all a great welcome.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having us out. We're really appreciative to be able to share what we do at South by with you guys. Like Pete said, my name is Katie. This is my colleague Dax. We both work at South by. How many of you have been to South by Southwest before? Oh good, talking to a familiar crowd. So wanted to go over a few general aspects of the event just to kind of familiarize yourself with it. This is our timeline of how things play out in the week. So these are all of our tracks of programming as well as our expos and our festivals. You'll see that the badge access varies by color and then they start at different points of the week. Being in Austin, you guys have a really great opportunity to see content throughout the week because you don't have to pay for a hotel to stay. New for this year, we have the space track. Future of Music is new for this year, as well as professional development and game industry. So there's some new content happening, which is really exciting. Like I mentioned, the conference is an opportunity for people to network, to learn, and advance their careers. We have 22 different tracks of programming, everything from advertising and brand experience to space and cannabis. So we cover a lot of different content. And then within our conference, we have a bunch of different formats that you can participate in. So book readings for some of those new books that have come out this year, featured sessions, which are our bigger names sessions, meetups, which are kind of like this, but a lot more informal. You get to network there with like-minded folks. Mentor sessions offer one-on-one mentorship in a lot of different topics if you are either an expert or would like to be mentored. We have pitch events, panels, a podcast stage, the list goes on. One thing I wanted to specifically call out, because the applications for this are still open, unlike a lot of things that we do at South by, is South by Southwest Release It. This is a special pitch competition that has features 10 companies to pitch their product or services, and it's for a new product or service. You don't have to be a startup, you just have to have launched something new. The deadline for that is Friday, January 17th, and you can find out more information on our website if you're interested. But like I said, this is one of the few opportunities remaining to get involved for South by Southwest 2020. And then why we're all here, some of the blockchain content at South by Southwest 2020. There's some history behind the blockchain content at our event. 2 years ago, we had a series of sessions around blockchain and cryptocurrency. 3 years ago? 2 or 3 years ago. And that was just a small grouping of sessions right as things were starting to pick up and become more mainstream. Then last year we had a specific blockchain track in one of those 25 tracks of programming that you saw. This year we've kind of realized that blockchain touches so many different industries that to have it all in one place kind of isolated some of the audience, and we wanted our broader audience to be able to participate in the content and learn from experts in blockchain. So we have blockchain content throughout all of our 22 tracks of programming. There will be a tag system coming in January where you can sort through it specifically on that. But this is a way that we could get the rest of our audience to experience some of this blockchain content and not have it siloed out. So with that, I want to highlight some of the sessions we have going on for South by Southwest 2020 in those different tracks of programming. There's a lot of text in these, so I promise I won't talk for too long, and Pete already stole my thunder on one of them. So the first session I want to highlight is called Crypto Assets, Venturing into the Unknown. This is a conversation with hedge funds, venture firms, with banking advisors to talk about what they're looking for when they're evaluating opportunities in cryptocurrency. So speakers are from Bison Trails, Multicoin Capital, Cambridge Associates, and Notation Capital. And that session is in the tech industry and enterprise track of programming, which is the track that I'm responsible for. This session is about digital art can save the art market. How can we build a new market for art, including using blockchain for scarcity and value, while also giving buyers this foundation of trust that their art is authentic. You can see this is some art that I pulled from the internet that apparently was some nice digital art. And you can see the speakers companies down there as well. This session is in our design track. Blockchains breaking tent poles. This is about bringing blockchain into the movie and film industry with speakers from Breaker, Unstoppable Domains, and Equinix, talking about how blockchain can be brought into the mix for independent production companies to kind of create this larger level of success like some of the giant studios are experiencing. This one Peach has talked about, so I'm going to skip over, but how to launch and grow next-gen blockchain networks. The future of supply chain and music, connecting rights, tracking metadata, all of these things that can be done with blockchain implementations. Somebody from Warner Music Group, somebody from Warner Chappell Music, Verify Media, and E1 Music, kind of talking about all things in the music industry that could use this application. This is in our Future of Music track. And I think this might be the last one. Can the telecoms industry be disrupted? Talking about using P2P and blockchain technology to create this vast wireless network that may kind of weed out some of these telecom companies with some local Austinites on here and folks launching in Austin. But we have Emory, Slow Ventures, Helium, and Tech Republic moderating this session. And maybe this is the last one. Electech is talking about the different ways that we can use technology to secure our elections. There's a lot of these cybersecurity conversations that are definitely going to touch on blockchain. They may not specifically call it out, but that's a lot of what's at the heart of this. Cybersecurity is one of our huge trends this year, so you'll see that coming out. This is more of an academic presentation with somebody from the UNH School of Law in Clemson. And finally, a session on neobanks and the future of banking in the online world and how we can, again, secure that, but then also make sure that this is something for everyone with connectivity. We have somebody from Coho, Equitable Bank, and Revolut. Dax, you want to come talk about ways to participate?
Give that leg a rest. Hi everyone, and so Katie's on the programming side of things. I'm more on the marketing and initiatives side of things as well. So I actually just finished traveling the country for 2 months, telling people how to engage with South by and some best practices and just strategy overall. So how to participate in South by Southwest. There's so many different ways. Katie mentioned one that's still open. So if you haven't launched a company or product by January 1st, 2020, you're eligible for South by Southwest pitch. Release it. I'm sorry, because pitch has closed. But what I want to do is get you all kind of prepared for 2021 and I always think of looking at South by as, okay, well, what can we accomplish this current year? But, year two is going to always look a little bit different. So we have a panel picker, which is our crowdsourcing method for selecting about 85% of the content within our conference, within those 22 tracks. And so panel picker is going to open in June 30th, 2020 for 2021. So really, it's kind of your opportunity to plant a seed each year for free to contribute to the content at South by Southwest. And so I always suggest if you're doing something innovative, go ahead and apply through Panel Picker and plant that seed. And then come October, is when our rejections and acceptance letters will go out, and you'll know if your seed is beginning to sprout. And then there's other applications such as music showcase application if you're a musician, film submissions as well. And then we have, the other events like our community service awards. So these are where we basically identify 12 individuals and companies that are doing really great things within their communities, and we have an entire grant. We invite them to come down and jump on our global stage and tell about the work they're doing. But so as a marketer or as somebody that has a startup or an established company, it's not a bad idea to throw your name in the hat through Panel Picker. August 1st is when we actually open up for business each year, and so that's when registrations go on sale. Y'all actually will have access for, as a member of Austin Blockchain Collective, you'll have access to a discount, so you don't really have to worry about that. But if you're interested in marketing or having, exhibiting at the trade show or having a house or any type of initiative, August 1st is when real estate goes on sale. And so, mid-October, if you hear that your panel picker gets accepted, it's not a bad idea to double down your efforts and have a multi-level approach at South by Southwest. I'm always happy to kind of talk about that, and we'll provide our contact information right here. But it's so important to kind of set objectives for South by each year. Do I want to speak? Do I want to market? Do I just want to attend and network? So set those objectives and then engage from there, and keep in mind that, your year 2 or year 3 or year 4, wherever you're at is going to be different. And so think long term and put on your calendar June 30th, 2020, SXSW panel picker. And then that's going to get your mind, started thinking for South by that following year, and you're going to be ahead of the game. It's because we don't want to be up here and telling you that all the deadlines are passed, because, yeah. So, we do have a group discount. You can reach out to Pete, and he'll be able to send you a discount code. It's going to be anywhere around $500 or more off the walk-up rate to attend. So it is a really solid savings. You want to act before January 17th because the group discounted rates go up $100, and then one other time in February, but you're still going to be saving a lot of money because we know not everyone thinks about South by until a little bit later. So, and questions?
Yeah. And this is our contact information. Sessions is a general about content. If you have any questions like that, you can also reach out to me. And then Dax's email is up there. My name is Katie, but my email is Caitlin. So if you email Katie you'll get a different Katie.
On my team.
Yes. And this is my fun Happy Holidays gift. Okay.
Super. Any quick questions before we move on? You're a remarkably good audience tonight. But sure, there are discounts. They're good discounts. They're worth having. And contact me via the website if you want to take advantage of them. So thank you both. Thanks for that.
And a nod to you that we appreciate your help setting content up, and also stay tuned for more announcements on our website.
There will be hopefully one more announcement to do with blockchain and South by Southwest coming very soon. God, I hope. Okay. That's good. Good. Okay, so we're going to carry on with the main content portion of the evening, and we've got 3 presentations from local startups, and I think we're going to begin with Nathan from Lone Star Data Technologies, and we'll take a moment to just get it set up and working, then he'll be on. Hold that for a moment.
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, just enjoying the night. Well, thanks for Pete and the Blockchain Collective for having me here. Great. Excellent. Well, hello. My name is Nathan Solzer. I'm the CEO and founder of Lone Star Data Technologies, and I'm going to be going over how we're using distributed ledger technology to provide security solutions for the Industry 4.0. Starting off, I would want to go over some key value points pointed out by the World Economic Forum and some of the main capabilities we take advantage of with distributed ledger technology. The first one being automation, which through network consensus and smart contracts, we're able to execute business policies into code. The security, the ability to encrypt and segregate data at the element level. Evidence tampering, with cryptographic and mathematical principles, we can validate the state of data to see if it had been tampered with or not. And distribution, where nodes share records, eliminating single points of failure. A little history in the state of Industry 4.0 and the history of automation. Beginning in the late 18th century, we saw advancements through mechanization, which is characterized by the steam engine and early adoption of factory systems. By the early 20th century, we saw machines transition to being powered by electricity and new methods such as Henry Ford's assembly line, enabling mass production. By the mid-century, computerization and robotics took place on the factory floor to help humans with their processes and their tasks. We're now transferring to a time where humans are actually phasing out of the production process in place of advanced technologies powered by artificial intelligence and big data and all connectivity. With this move to automation, there are some inherent security risks. Machine learning algorithms require large data sets that are consumable in order to train models. To gather this data to train the models, connected devices are being implemented on site to produce this information. These connected devices create a large surface area for attack. Even this morning, just running a basic security script, Shodan, I was able to identify 120,000 connected industrial control systems. And that's just industrial control systems that are literally say industrial control. So you could imagine the devices that don't say ICS to be near the millions. And this traditional operational technology was always designed to be a closed system, isolated from the outside world when it was implemented. Still operating on legacy communication protocols such as Modbus, which lack basic security features such as authentication, confidentiality, and replay protection. So anyone with communication to these devices can potentially control them. We've built a data-centric platform to enable trusted data streams for automation devices. By defining access control policies on the network level through smart contracts, employing cryptography principles to verify only authorized devices can have access to communication channels, and validating critical state variables such as flow rate, speed, or temperature through smart contracts that can validate themselves historically onto the ledger, as well as creating an immutable event log maintained by distributed consensus. In 2007, researchers from the Idaho National Laboratory wanted to conduct a security test to see vulnerabilities in the electrical grid. Solely through internet connections, they were able to alter the state variables of relay timing in a diesel generator. This got the diesel generator out of synchronization, and it actually tore itself apart. So imagine driving down the highway and then you just flip your transmission into reverse. What that would do to your transmission. You don't want to do that. So here's the actual the Aurora generator test. Ooh. To some people, this is terrifying. Oh, it's not playing on the screen. Well, anyways, it explodes. Well, if you watch it explode, you would realize there could be horrifying potentials, such as if one generator goes down, it could result into a cascading failure, where other generators in the grid, to compensate the loss of the initial generator, have to compensate and fail in a positive feedback loop, overall crashing the entire system. That's the number one cause of rolling blackouts. These generators are extremely expensive. 2.5 megawatt generators, such as the one pictured in the Aurora example, they range anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million per piece. And if one breaks, the uptime to replace it is extremely long, up to a year, because most of these generators and transformers are made custom spec. In the worst case scenario that could ever happen is a death or severe injury of a workplace operator. In 2015, these exploitations were actually seen in a real-world environment when malicious actors from Russia took control of Modbus protocols in a Ukrainian power grid. They were able to alter the same state variables that seen in the Aurora generator and take 30 generators down. While they were, as they were attacking, they used kill disk wiper malware to delete centralized logs that were critical to incident response. Counter incident response is pretty much the standard, the number one play in a hacker's playbook to delete the record of them being there. So once incident's response actually got there, they had no idea what they were doing. So it's easy to see the value of immutability when it comes to something critical like event logs. The aftermath of the attack, 30 substations were down for 12 hours, 250,000 residents went without power, damaged operational equipment in these substations, and overall just terrible PR for Ukraine and the state of cybersecurity. How could distributed ledger technology have prevented this? Well, proper encryption techniques would have made it difficult for hackers to identify communication channels, defining access permissions on Modbus to define just control, validating state variables to detect anomalies, and then last case, retaining immutable event logs. So if a scenario did occur, you could retain what Modbus access control was compromised and other details critical in recovery. So 2020 is going to be a big year for Lone Star. We're taking advantage of our geography of being in Texas and working in penetrating the oil and gas industry. We built a proof of concept for a Mexican upstream oil production company where we'll be verifying access control from their Modbus terminals and other communication protocols, monitoring critical state variables that come off their on-site programmable logic controllers, and aggregating that data onto a distributed ledger. Here's an example of an example transaction from that proof of concept. The transaction hash representing the individual transaction, the contract representing the company, the IP that the device was located on from the remote terminal unit, the user in control of that Modbus policy, in this case Jose Ramon, the device ID, and then the state variable, in this case a temperature value. We'll also be serving as a key component in a large predictive maintenance project for a major oil company in the UK, where we'll be securing and validating the communication channels from the industrial devices to the cloud, where we'll be ledgering this data to be fed into predictive maintenance models. This year we had a lot of great things happen for us, like getting into the Capital Factory Accelerator and forming a lot of partnerships with IoT manufacturers in the oil and gas industry, automation service providers who are implementing connected solutions in a variety of industries, and artificial intelligence companies looking to gather data in sensitive areas. We recently sat down with the former CEO of DJI to talk about potential applications of our solution in the commercial drone industry, in which he forecasted that validating communication channels will be one of the biggest issues drones face as they hit the market and become fully autonomous. We're also looking to expand into smart cities, and we're looking at asset management solutions, as well as just expanding our overall Industry 4.0 service offering. When we designed our solution, we always intended it to be consensus modular, so we can operate on Ethereum and Neo, but we use Hedera Hashgraph for a variety of reasons. Their Gossip protocol allows for high throughput and high transaction speeds. They are asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerant, which is the highest standard of distribution or security in distributed systems. They have a strong team led by Mance Harmon and Dr. Lehman Baird, who are two veteran technologists and with decades of entrepreneurial experience. And they have a strong corporate governance council, with members such as Boeing, IBM, Deutsche Telekom, and Tata Communications, which really puts them in a good position for enterprise adoption. They're also based right in our backyard in Dallas, Texas, so we've been able to form a strong relationship with their team, which gives us some sort of peace of mind. Well, to wrap up, Lone Star Data Technologies provides leverages distributed ledger technology in order to create trusted data streams for autonomous devices and to create values for operators in industrial settings. To learn more, you can go to lonestardata.io or email me any questions, comments at info@lonestardata.io. That's it. Yeah. And feel free to ask any questions now. Basic scenario. Well, we deliver SDKs that they would deploy in their Modbus terminal, where it would format data into an encrypted JSON file, and then our API looks for those endpoints where we can ledger that data. The UI? Devices, in this case, programmable logic controllers, but specifically remote terminal units, which are kind of like industrial gateways that just communicate the data from these basic machines. Go. Yeah. So do you put the data on chain? Yes, like the. Yeah. Yeah. Not in any proof of concept, but there's definitely possibilities for that. Yes, but that goes into some Hedera details. Yeah. Yes, sir. Is the product actually inline, and how much latency would you expect? So Hedera is has extremely low latency.
Right, but is the solution inline? In other words, you mentioned is to validate the values.
Mm-hmm.
You're not adding your out of balance values.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So in that policing function, how much latency does your product have?
Nanoseconds. So I'm the CEO, and my technical partner, who unfortunately couldn't be here, he is the Hedera expert, and he could answer all those questions. And if you'd like him to answer any of your technical questions that I can't, you can email info@LoneStar, and I promise we'll get back to you. Yes, sir.
Kind of a big picture question.
Yeah.
Do you think the cycles of innovation are favoring the bad guys globally still?
That's a real funny question, because as an enterprise, you have to look at, when you're bringing a product to market, if no one pays for it and you're too early, you're also wrong. So you have to look at where the big enterprises are paying for solutions. So, oil companies, kind of the bad guys, but also critical.
Talk about hackers.
Oh, hackers.
Talk about like bad actor
Yeah.
types. Do you think the cycles of innovation favored them versus favored the security teams? I read a white paper on this. I thought
Yeah.
that
Well,
you think otherwise?
Well, I would agree, because a lot of times the hackers are the most innovative because they're not necessarily playing in the boxes and the parameters of rules. And a lot of times these hackers are technologists exploring like new solutions and are usually on the forefront of technology. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And we took a look at all what you were just talking about, all the substations and how to protect them, and everything you just said was spot on.
Thank you. So yeah, we're trying to penetrate Our TAM, which total addressable market, would be automation devices. Our SAM, serviceable addressable market, would be industrial control systems. And our obtainable market is we're focusing in oil and energy in Texas. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all.
Thank you. So, going to move swiftly on with the next presentation, which I think we need to just do a bit of dexterity on my laptop, get it out of AirPlay, which it can do. Okay, good. You should be. Great. So this is Gordon from a company now called Form. Was called something else, but he's going to tell us all about it. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Gordon Matty. I'm the CEO of Form, based here in Austin, Texas. What I'm going to talk to you today about is bridging what we call the data control gap by using data custody technology. So mostly talking about the problem and how to go about solving the problem versus the specific product details, but we'll get into some of that as we go on. So we estimate through looking at all the primary research out there that there's about $1 trillion spent in storing, securing, and ensuring the privacy of data in all the systems that operate on data today. And generally, those data systems kind of look a bit like this, but in the virtual world, where you have a nice secure perimeter where you can keep all your data in nice safe boxes and you can put locks and keys on them and make sure no one can get in. However, if you were to ask any Fortune 500 CEO who is using your data yesterday, right now, they would not be able to answer that question. I tried to find a picture of Mark Zuckerberg shrugging, but I couldn't find one. But the same thing applies to Elon Musk at Tesla. There's literally no way of them knowing what's happening on their data because there is an inability to be able to trace every point in the chain in which data is being used across networks. And that's because businesses rely on the fact that data needs to be able to flow everywhere. It flows inside organizations across departments. It flows between subsidiaries in multinational companies. And critically, it also flows outside of those companies into third-party networks that are being provided by vendors, service providers, partners, or even competitors as well. And when data flows everywhere, what happens is there's a loss of control. So enterprises are sending all sorts of data onto third parties. It could be customer profile data, it could be banking transaction data, it could be IoT sensor data. And when they send that data to a third party, the current state of the art, as I'm sure most of you know, is to take a copy of that data and then store it in your own system. And so when that third party takes a copy of the data, it's just like taking a photocopy of it. The data becomes insecure. You have no idea how it's being secured. Access to it becomes opaque. You don't know who's looking at it. And it is completely uncontrolled, and you can't take it back. And this data control gap is very acutely felt by organizations of all sizes today. And there's really three areas that it kind of manifests its main problems. Firstly, at a high level, data control is people try and bridge it through the use of legal contracts. Those legal contracts between the parties spell out what the rules are around the custody of the data, what security needs to be put in place, what adherence to privacy policies needs to be factored in. But the reality is that the only way to enforce that legal contract is through an audit of some kind. So the data owner needs to go to the third party and audit their systems and make sure they're doing what they say they can do from a contractual perspective. Now, the auditing process is very slow. It takes, for a small company, 2 months, maybe 2 to 4 months to audit someone else's systems. For a large company like JP Morgan, working with a third-party vendor, it takes 6 to 9 months to audit their environment to make sure they get comfortable with what's happening over there. And in the backdrop here, we have increasing levels of data privacy regulation being rolled out, starting with GDPR in Europe a couple of years ago, and now rolling out in the US, in Nevada, as well as California. California enacts something called the California Consumer Protection Act that goes into effect January 1. And what all of these acts try and do is increase the level of transparency and control the consumer can have on the data. But if you can't control your data downstream with all your vendors that you're working with, there's no hope for you to be able to help the customer understand what's happening with the data. Also, what's happening is that what we see happening in Europe is that the scope of the data regulation is getting stricter over time. So, for example, in Germany recently, there was a court ruling that stated that if you own a website and you're capturing data on that website through a third-party plugin, imagine it's a Stripe payment form where the website's not capturing any data, but all of the payment information is being passed to Stripe to process that information. The brand that is presented on the website is still liable for any data breaches on that data in the future. So you can't use technology to get out of the fact that you have to have strong understanding of a strong ability to control your data in distribution. The second problem is that auditing is really expensive. Auditing requires you to interview the third party, maybe even go on site in a lot of cases, because the kind of the way people think about it is about securing the perimeter. So if you work with JP Morgan, they will come to your office and they will make sure you have video cameras installed. They will make sure that you have laptops automatically locking the screen, etc. And that's very, very expensive to do that on an annual basis. And they do it because the cost of non-compliance is really, really high. The total cost of non-compliance in the US is about $400 billion in the US today, which is the cost of fines, the cost of lost revenue, brand reputation impact, etc. And finally, auditing ultimately is ineffective, because I can go to someone's, look at their systems on one day, and then I'll look at their systems again in a year's time, and there are 364 days in which they can change their systems, they can misconfigure a server, they can upload new code, and they can create the potential for a data breach to occur within the systems, and I would never know about it as the data owner. Now, something else that's interesting that's happening is that all of the insurance policies that every company pays for to protect them from having to pay for fines and remediation around a data breach are going to drastically increase in the very near future. Right now, if I have 10 million customers and I'm sending my data to 100 different third-party vendors, I will pay the same amount in insurance that if I have 10 million customers and I'm not sending the data to anyone, right? So the risk of what happens with my data and who can breach it is starting to be built into new insurance models, because the old insurance models were based on very old data and the old way of doing things, and not the much more modern kind of cloud environment that we live in. So Facebook will spend a lot more in cyber insurance than anyone else. So third-party data sharing is a huge issue, and it's only getting worse because of all of these different factors. And it's been said that data is as valuable as oil, and the reality is that today that CEO can have a leak from their systems, and there will be an oil spill, and it'll be too late before they realize it, and all hell is going to break loose. And so we kind of set out to imagine a better future, and to bring it down to a kind of a real level that you might understand is that we imagine that securely sharing databases between companies should be as easy as using something like Dropbox or Google Drive. And Dropbox and Google Drive aren't blockchains, they don't use blockchain obviously today, but they do provide three critical properties. The first is that you can guarantee the data is secure at all times. You have complete transparency in terms of who's accessing your data anywhere within any network. And finally, you have instant control. You can always revoke access to the data or change who can see the data. And so what we believe is that there is a solution, a new type of solution that doesn't really fall into any set of existing kind of technologies that people look at today that we call data custody technology. And data custody technology really brings together a set of technologies such as a distributed data store, advanced cryptography, and a blockchain to enable you to deliver a solution where you can confidently share data with other people. And there are really kind of those three kind of key elements that are the building blocks for this solution. The first is identity, so something that you can provably assign ownership of data to, and you can also have confidence in the security around the usage of that identity, i.e. not just falling back and relying on usernames and passwords, for example. The second is access control, and this is really around defining who has access to any given piece of data at any given point in time, and all of the rules around enforcing that access control in real time. I don't know if you can see here, but this says blockchain underneath. So these two areas is really where blockchain shines in terms of being able to deliver something with strong identity and provably running access control logic on any point in the network. And then finally, a distributed data store. So the entire generation of databases that we rely on today is really about storing data somewhere. You ask any application developer where you're storing your data, they could tell you. They could point at the URL or the domain or whatever it might be, and they can say, I'm storing it here. They don't necessarily have to understand exactly where it's going on the back end, but it is somewhere. But as we just talked about, data is everywhere. And so you can't actually say data is in one place, it needs to be able to go everywhere. And so a distributed data store needs to be able to operate in any environment, and it also needs to guarantee encryption on that data. And so data custody technology it kind of inverts the data access model from one that we're used to, where we kind of wrap all of our systems with identity at the edge and try and secure the perimeter. And once the perimeter is breached, then you pretty much get access to everything else inside. And using identity at the root of the system, and using identity as the method by which we enforce access control and ultimately access to data anywhere on the network. From a blockchain perspective, the implementation uses something that we call smart data tokens. So the way that this works at a high level is that you think about within a blockchain environment, someone has a wallet. That wallet is unlocked by their identity, essentially through their key. And if I have possession of a smart data token, that gives me access to the data. It means I have custody of the data. I can access it at any point in time and use it in an application. If I want to transfer that access to someone else, I can send that smart data token from my wallet to another wallet, and then that gives the receiver the access to the data through the smart data token. The data token is very simply kind of a license to custody the data. It can specify access rights. It can specify usage limits, i.e. use it only once or use it only for a certain time period. You can apply privacy rules to it as well, i.e. if you send it to an address to one of these addresses, then you should always, for example, mask some of the data. So if it's a social security number going outside of your company, always mask the first digits, as an example. And you can also accommodate for dynamic rules. So in real time, you can operate policy based on variables that are coming up in the environment. And ultimately, it makes data custody transferable, and you can control how far you can send data down the chain as well. Something that's very common today is sharing with third parties. What's also happens, less common, but it certainly does happen, is sharing with a fourth party. So a lot of the time, the data owner actually doesn't know the data is going somewhere else. And we've come across these use cases actually talking to customers where they've discovered this through RFP processes, where they were using one vendor, then it went out for an RFP to a bunch of other vendors, and then another vendor said, oh, we already have your data. And so all of the systems that exist today really don't help you understand the entire chain of where your data is going. And so data custody technology reduces this counterparty friction in terms of being able to share data with one another. One good analogy here is comparing kind of what happened with music file sharing in the late 90s, early 2000s, where people were just uploading data and copying music between each other. And now that everyone has a music subscription with something like Spotify, the amount of sharing has drastically gone down because I can get convenient access to my data, to music that's generally on a global basis. And so from a business-to-business data sharing perspective, we believe that the same thing is going to happen, where data is going to be moved from being copied over and over again to being used in more like a subscription model, where when I ask for access to it, it will validate that I do have access to it. When I get access to it, it will give me the best version of that data. It will tell me exactly what I'm looking at and give me all the metadata around it. Data custody technology fundamentally solves the needs in a way for data sharing in a way that other technologies simply don't. And so when we think about the kind of the existing solution sets that are out there, they really fall into three areas. The first is kind of data platforms, people like Plaid or Tradeshift, which are aggregating huge amounts of sensitive data around supply chain or around financial transactions. The biggest challenge they have is that you have to trust them. There's no concept of sharing that data with a third party. There's no chain of control. So if I work with Plaid as a application developer, JP Morgan has no ability to kind of leverage control on the data that I'm capturing within my applications. If we look at cloud databases that suck up all of the air in the room, are very, very scary for anyone working in kind of the data space, because if you go to Amazon, there's 30 databases they sell. I can probably buy another 250 from other different vendors on their cloud. But the biggest challenge with all these systems is that they are distributed only in terms of kind of load and processing. They're not truly decentralized, and so they have no ability to enforce kind of end-to-end privacy on the data. They can't guarantee data to be encrypted all the way through the chain. And then finally, the third area is something that we've identified very early on. We've been operating for 18 months now, very deep in blockchain. And there's a lot of enterprise blockchain solutions that are out there that are professing to solve this problem around data sharing. And the biggest problem with most of those chains is that they require the storing of data on-chain. And so once you start hitting scale with these solutions, you're going to blow the block size. You're going to drastically reduce the performance and throughput of what's happening on-chain. And so you shouldn't really be storing all of your data on-chain. So they don't really handle what they need to, which is big data operating at scale. So data custody technology enables us to create these secure data sharing networks across from one company with their kind of constituent user vendors that they're working with, but ultimately you can imagine people creating much broader networks of data sharing across entire ecosystems. And when that happens, data sharing creates a lot more value ultimately. So companies can either choose to stay inside the data control gap and not get out of it, which means they'll keep spending money on auditing, and they'll spend more and more over time. They're going to move very slowly, and ultimately they'll pray that they aren't in the morning news. That's a quote from one of our customers, that they pray every day. And the alternative is to bridge the gap. And if you bridge the gap, then you can build new new business models with your data. There's a lot of untapped opportunity around monetization of data because people are scared to share it, particularly scared to share it in a way that anonymizes any private information. It also enables companies to increase business performance. Being able to switch from one vendor to another quickly within days and not months is critical. And ultimately, you can start optimizing processes by farming out certain parts of what you depend on to third parties. We think that the market for building the secure data sharing networks is absolutely massive, and it's really really big because if you look at what the cost of compliance today is, that's also very big, right? It costs we think about $90 billion a year in the U.S. alone just to operate these processes, to audit vendors, to make sure that they're compliant with the legal requirements in the contract. And so we think that there is a huge opportunity today. When we look at the market size, we think it's about $55 billion in the US and only getting bigger. It only gets bigger because we have all of these new platforms and new technologies and capabilities. We're creating more data in more places than ever before. And at a very basic level, I'm sure most people in this room are using some kind of SaaS tool, like a Salesforce or a Google Drive or whatever. And the growth of SaaS is forecasted to grow 2 times in the next 4 years. And SaaS is a third-party sharing agreement. If you look at any deal that a SaaS vendor has with, any deal that a SaaS vendor has with one of their customers, data sharing is a big part of that deal. Who owns the data? So we expect a huge amount of impact on every existing system that touches data in the future. People like Salesforce have to be able to drastically change the way they operate on data today. Anyone that uses an API to share data with someone needs to change the way that they operate on data today, because they have to remove the possibility of having an insecure copy of that data anywhere in the system. And so at Forum, we are pioneering the implementation of data custody technology. We expect other people to be building very similar solutions. There are others in the market today, of course. There are definitely a lot of companies that are building out blockchains and blockchain networks. But ultimately, the goal is, from our perspective, is to find traction in early customer use cases. We've been focused on financial services predominantly to date, and looking for kind of major players in data sharing ecosystems that we can work with to leverage their kind of weight, essentially, so that their vendors will choose, that want to work with them will be able to do so very quickly without having to spend months and months on going through compliance. So that's it for now. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, thank you. Certainly feel free to email me, or we can go for it now.
So one of our attorneys, or one of the hedge funds, we talked to Franklin Templeton. They're pretty big in the Bay Area. He said just a simple transaction, on one of their funds, there's 8 middlemen, 2 banks, 2 custodians, a DTCC. I don't know who the other 3 are. There's a lot of and you add on the complexity of crypto. You have to timestamp it. It's got to be in the right block, right? It's got to be defendable, right? And so that we're encountering a lot of problems with firms or fund managers that are actually auditing returns in a timely manner. Is that you said financial services?
Well, yeah. So we certainly see some use cases. Specifically that example, when you're operating a large company, you're sending your financial data to an auditor like a PwC or whatever it might be. Well, whoever you're sending it to, that there is a huge potential for a breach there. In fact, it happened in the UK, right? Asda, owned by Walmart here in the US. In the UK, a disgruntled employee had access to the entire set of accounts for the company and disclosed it through a data breach, because they didn't have strong controls in place in terms of who can access that data and how much they can see at any given point in time. So it's really around kind of data custody versus kind of currency custody, or any form of currency. Although financial services companies certainly understand what custody means, because they understand what it means from a financial perspective. We do see also some companies in the financial services space, in particular, if Wells Fargo have launched a data control center. I think they call it Watchtower or something, or Clock Tower, where if you're a Wells Fargo customer in your bank account, when you sign in to look at your bank account, if you click in the right place, you can see where they're sharing your data. I don't know how automated it is, but banks definitely see the value in helping you understand what's happening with the data that they're capturing. And I think long term may actually believe that they could custody the data for you and help you monetize it. Although Brian might have a view on that, because I think you're working more directly in that space. Yeah.
Hey, Gordon, I had a quick question. You're talking about an ecosystem earlier.
Yep.
Right? It's like sort of, is that the permission piece with the data?
Yeah, essentially the smart data token is your access control. So it provides the permissions to be able to use the data in some way.
And so if I transfer that to another party, let's say you gave me the access, or I transferred it, what is actually authenticating that the person I transferred it to has credentials for the data?
Well, it's all stored within the smart contract. So you can think of the smart contract ultimately storing a bunch of state that at any given point in time will represent who has access to what within the system. And so when you transfer that token to someone else, assuming that transfer was allowed, and assuming they have the right kind of setup on their side, within the contract, they'll be able to access the data.
It's really transferable to people that were in business marketing.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but those are a set of rules. There's a set of rules that operate on that, and then there's a set of it depends on how you want to implement it. Implementing it in a private network is different than a public blockchain. Within the private networks that were, or within these kind of business-to-business sharing deals that are encoding the current contracts, essentially what we enable the company to do is, on the receiver side, onboard individual users into the system, specify the user groups that they're part of, and then the sender kind of provides the rights to which groups are allowed to access what data. So, for example, if I send data to someone, then the developer team gets access to a view of the data because they have to be able to integrate with it. The marketing team gets access to a set of data for their particular use, and so on and so forth. You can create these different user groups. In the case of the developer group, that's a great example where we support the ability to simulate the data instead of sending them real data. One of the biggest issues that we see is developers walking around with entire data sets about customers on their laptops, unsecured typically. And so we also support that workflow, which drastically reduces the time it takes to integrate as well. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gordon. So I think we're ready for the final presentation of the evening. A different take on the world of data and how you can organize it, leverage it, monetize it, etc. With kind of a bit more of an application focus, I think, this one. So very good. Oh. Nothing can go wrong. 6738. Excellent. There you go. Over to you, to Brian Manell with Veremos, who is a member of our healthcare working group at the Collective. And so that might be a bit about what the application's about. Okay, over to you, Brian.
Thank you very much. My name is Brian Manell. A little bit about myself. Co-founded Capital Factory here 10 years ago, along with Josh Baer and Sam Decker. And now this is the second company that I've put through the Capital Factory Accelerator. We sold the last one in 2016. So this is number 2 for Capital Factory. I'm a unicorn founder. What else? First got interested in blockchain technology actually back in 2013. I was doing some work in the restaurant point of sale payment industry back then. And the senior executives at Square challenged me to pay for dinner in Bitcoin. So I even let the CFO pick the restaurant where we did that. And 2 weeks later, we had dinner and paid the tab in Bitcoin. Not like sidechain, not like all Bitcoin, the owner money later or whatever, like actually settled on the point of sale system back then. So won that bet. That was an expensive dinner, though. It was something in today's dollars, I don't even know how much that was. I don't want to do that math because it's just depressing. But did that? We were one of the first ones to get the first version of the Coinbase API back then, and Brian Armstrong helped us out to get that done. Like super fun. Now I'm interested in other sorts of things like health and wellness data. So that's what we're doing at Veremos. So back in 2017, like The Economist came out and said, like, data is the new oil, and now everybody says data is the new oil. Well, half people say that. Other half say that's a terrible analogy. It doesn't really work that way. It's not the new oil. Whatever side you fall on, we all know data is important, especially in health and wellness, which is the part that we're interested in. in terms of health data. At the same time, data is big business in health and wellness. Some people say, there was a study I saw that if you think about your last doctor visit, there's a 95% chance that some element about that doctor visit that you had, that data was sold somewhere without your knowledge. And I'm tempted to say without your consent, but actually you did consent. You just didn't know it, right? The way consent works in the medical and healthcare field is really super, super interesting. Like Pete, imagining when you had your surgery, right? Like they're wheeling you back on the gurney, you're in pain, you're just dying to get relief from this thing, and they go, oh, by the way, here's a clipboard with 84 pages of stuff, could you please sign this? Like, you're not going to read that. Well, if you did read it in the fine print, it says you consent to them selling your data to anybody they want to and making all sorts of money off you, because they're not making much money off you already, so they want to make more off you. So data in healthcare is like really, really big business. The news came out just like a month ago or so, if you didn't read it, but Google is partnering with Ascension Healthcare. It's not the Seton Ascension system, it's the other big one that owns like half of all the hospitals in the world. Google's now sucking in all your data about all your healthcare visits, doctor visits, all that sort of stuff. And it's all legal and okay because they're a business associate of the people. So basically, like, your privacy is pretty much shot and dead. You're welcome. So in the world of health data, there's really two different types of data that we look at. One is critical care data. That is like, I'm in the hospital, I'm dying, I went to the doctor, I had a heart replacement, I had this thing done, this procedure, all the things that happen within the four walls of healthcare, the really, really expensive stuff. That's critical care data. That's data trying to get you from sick back to just at least walking wounded and get you out the door again. That's critical care. Now, ambulatory data is all the stuff that happens not in the four walls. So if you think about, like, my Apple Watch collects my heart rate, my steps, I have like a sleep app, people do like map my run, map my fitness, they log their meals, all the calories, how many I'm having, like what did I sleep, what did I do. All this stuff that's really big social determinants of health that are out there. And it's kind of siloed. It's kind of everywhere. A lot of it lives in HealthKit if you're in the Apple ecosystem, which is kind of cool. But all that stuff we believe is like really important. And we also think that you should be able to have a way to kind of get your arms around all of it and control it. And ideally, monetize it yourself instead of everybody else doing it. So when you think about all this ambulatory data, most people don't think about where it should belong or where it should go or where does it like happen. But if you think about, just thinking for yourself, like, where should that data reside? Should it be with my employer, right? Because they typically provide my insurance or insure me. Should it belong with my doctor? Because my doctor is interested in my health, perhaps. Like, do I trust those folks to own and control my data and not sell it? Because I know they already are selling it. Do I trust, like, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon with that data? Because that stuff breaches and leaks left and right all the time everywhere, right? I don't trust that. Do I trust Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, Cigna, Aetna with that data? They're going to be out of business in 10 years, so probably not, and I'm going to live longer than 10 years. So, the best place for that would be, like, right, a great place for blockchain technology, right? Then I could have the keys, I could, like, give people permission, and we think also perhaps monetize the data as well. So we help people get their arms around data, pull in as much health and wellness data as possible to help service and support their own health and wellness, and then give them the keys to their own data. And then we have this digital token. We won't go into technical details. Honestly, we've not minted the token. We're not doing an ICO. We're not doing all that stuff because, honestly, consumers don't care. We do a lot of this stuff in the background because someday people will care, and when they do, we'll have all the stuff that they want and care about. But ours is kind of like a data exchange token. So when people give us data about what they're doing, we give them this digital token. It's like fingerprinted and all that sort of stuff back to them that represents their data around health and wellness. The tricky part is that anytime you can get something for something, people want to gamify, right? Like, oh, how do I take my Fitbit and strap it to the ceiling fan and have it go around and around and around and get my steps, like, for doing that, which is silly because, you know, there's no benefit in doing that. But gamification is an issue. So in our mobile apps and things that we're doing with mobile health technology, we don't give people digital tokens for accomplishing things or doing things. Like if it was let's say if it was a weight loss challenge, I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, we don't give you tokens for losing 20 pounds because you'll just weigh your cat instead of yourself and just to get tokens, right? So we give people tokens in exchange for data, no matter what the data is, and then it's relatively automated. So if we ask you a question like, hey, did you eat at McDonald's or did you make dinner at home last night or did you skip a meal or whatever, we don't care what the answer is. You get tokens anyway because all the answers are valid if you're trying to figure out, you know, correlations between what you're eating and how you're sleeping and how you feel and all these sorts of things, right? All the data is important. So we don't want to create adverse incentives to tell us things that aren't true. So it's a difficult sort of user experience journey to be relatively neutral in these sorts of things. So we right now, like, where are we? Well, you know, we've actually done a few interesting pivots over time in trying to learn what people want in terms of health and wellness. But you know, we focus on things that help people. So we have a hypertension solution that we're shipping right now. We're working with a partner on helping close the loop on nutrition that they get at like work, like when you get free food at Facebook and Google and whatever, and you want a keto diet and why are you doing that and all sorts of things. So, you know, we actually solve kind of people problems and employer problems and those sorts of things, and all the things that we try and do in the back end in terms of data, ownership and privacy and those sorts of things are really almost invisible to people. So we try to make it like a byproduct of what happens, not the main value point, because honestly, the stuff we've talked about, people will not pay money for. They do not care. They're generally perfectly happy to have their data sold. But you know, with this sort of Facebook, you know, delete Facebook movement, people are starting to kind of figure out, like, you know, they don't want to be the product anymore. And so there's this little bit of a groundswell happening. So we'll see what happens. We'll give it time. All these things are cooking. We're playing the long game on this one. But you know, that's kind of what we're interested in and focusing on in little bits and pieces in terms of wellness data. So ideally, what's the end result? You own the data. You can decide if you want to sell it. You can decide. You can you know, be able to make money on it. So ideally, if we're able to aggregate all kinds of data, and to make this work, like, you have to have like a shit ton of data, right, before people find value in it. So if we can aggregate a shit ton of data, if we're successful in doing that, then we can find people that want to like pay for it, and then you've got that digital token, so you basically share the wealth and the data that's expressed there. So that's how the loop gets closed. But we're a ways away. It's going to take a while to get a lot of data that's there, and see how that goes. And I've been reading some stuff on like de-identified data too, right? It's like, oh, like in healthcare, they sell your data like, well, we take your name off of it and your social off of it, and we sell it. But then you talk to like the real smart data science guys, and they go, there's no such thing as de-identified data. Like, you give me enough of it, I can tell exactly who you are. Your name's not on it, I'll go pair it up with identified data that I've got you. You know, I know exactly who's got cancer, and you know who to sell Nexium to and whatever. Like, like de-identified doesn't mean anything, right? So it's a crazy Wild West data world out there, but it's interesting. So anyway, any questions on my little diatribe there? No good. I'm just kidding. I'll give you a minute. So. What's that? Yes, we are. We are not HIPAA compliant. So all the information we get does not come from doctors or insurance companies, whatever. It comes from people. So if people tell me I have cancer, I'm not bound by HIPAA to keep that private, even though we do. Somebody else, yeah.
Who would you submit as a company or organization that you would regard as the leader in ethical brokering of our health data, doing it right from the point of view of what you...
Wow. I'm searching. I don't know. I mean, all these folks are disclosing to you that they're going to sell your data. You're signing away that you know that, right? And all the little bird seed at the bottom of everything you sign. Like, so nothing's illegal. All or even unethical, right? But is it the right thing to do? No, right? So I can't think of a bastion of sort of data purity out there in the healthcare world at all. I mean, healthcare is so messed up. That's the problem. Like it's so messed. It's it's a crazy world. So I can't think of anybody that's really just killing it out there. That's doing cool stuff. Really. I mean, maybe Apple's the closest in a way, right? There's shit that happens in your phone because they sort of care about privacy and data and whatever that you don't even know about, they don't even tell you about, don't tell anybody about, right? That keeps stuff away from people, like so. So I don't, they do an okay job of stuff. Like they have a big. It's probably the biggest like sort of health data platform out there, but they open it to developers. But it's up to you as a consumer to say like, yes, give this access to my HealthKit data or whatever, right? So they put you. So I mean, Apple does a pretty good job, honestly, in terms of that stuff so far. So, anybody else? I'm standing between you and going home and doing your evening work, right? Before tomorrow morning's meetings. Anybody else? No? Cool. You can find me. I'm Brian, BRYAN at Veramos.com if you ever think of something later. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the presenters, Brian, Gordon, Nathan, and South by Southwest people. So I guess the takeaways for tonight is that data is really valuable. It's unfortunately pretty much out of control in terms of how it's used, who has access to it. In general, the man in the street, woman in the street does not have a lot of control. That there are bad actors out there wanting to get at the data and do bad things to not just us, but things that really run the world in terms of machinery. So with these fairly bleak thoughts, I'm going to wish you all happy holidays. I'm sure we will be here in 2020. First Austin Blockchain Collective meetup of the new year is January 20th. So love to see everyone back here in this room for that. Thanks all for coming here, being here. South by Southwest passes. Send me a message via the website or my email, peter@austinblockchaincollective.com, and I can tell you about discounts. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Which is better, ABC South by discount or Apple Factory South by discount?
I actually don't know what deal I can tell you what deal I got. Well, I can't right now. I suspect it's pretty similar. I figure they give more or less the same thing. Otherwise, we'll all try arbitrage or something. But yeah.
That's what I figured. Very cool.